Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Startup Planner. Our show is intended to help those who are trying to start their own cybersecurity startup company, and we wanted to share some thoughts and ideas in that area. Our show is by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, and we're hoping to build a community of people interested in the same topics and wanting to share their ideas and their thoughts and the challenges associated with starting their own company. But I must remind you, we are not lawyers and we don't play lawyers on TV. Druce and I are here to share our thoughts and our experiences and hope that maybe, just maybe, we can help you take that first step towards your own startup company. My name is Jon Duran, and I've been in startups for a number of years throughout my life, and now I work with startup companies on a regular basis.
And I'm Druce McFarlane. Today's topic, we're going to be talking a little bit about, if you've been following along, we've had a series called the 3Ps, which is the plan, the product, and the personnel. So far, we've been primarily focusing on product-based companies. In other words, companies that really sort of differentiate themselves with something that's very unique from a product standpoint. But we also want to talk today a little bit about plan-based companies. Now,
do I really look like a guy with a plan?
Something to keep in mind here is that there's no such thing as a company that is 100% exclusively about plan. It's usually going to be some sort of a spectrum in between the two of those things. But we're going to be talking about plan because plan can sometimes be the make or break between whether or not your company can survive against an onslaught of competition from other sources. We'll be right back. So welcome back. And as I mentioned earlier on, today that we're going to be talking about the 3Ps. Now, if you want a little bit more of a education as to what the 3Ps are, we actually have done an entire episode based on those. But I'll give you a little bit of a refresher course right here, just so that you have enough to be able to go on through the rest of this episode. The 3Ps stand for product, plan, and personnel. And the idea behind these is when you actually start going out to different venture capitalist firms, each venture capital firm is going to be interested in those 3Ps. Often they're going to be hyper-focused on one over all the others. There's going to be some organizations that if you've got the best intellectual property, you've got something that's very defensible and it's potentially disruptive, that's all that they care about. They don't care whether or not you've got the right people in place because they can always put the right people, and those right people can always put the right plan in place. So we've been focusing a lot on those products because often when you talk to people who are starting off this process, that's often where they're focused. But today we're going to be talking more about the plan side of the equation and what we mean by plan, because as I mentioned earlier on, every single organization is going to be some spectrum of somewhere between a product and a plan. A plan-based organization means that it's not as important that your product is 100% unique. You might be coming to market with a product that has been readily available in other environments for a long period of time, but you have a slightly different take on how to bring this to market that is going to give you that unique differentiator. It's not 100% about the product, but more how you're bringing it to market. So we've got a couple of different examples that Jon and I can actually mention here, and I'm going to harp on one because I was actually sort of part of it. When you think about Juniper went out there, they created certain routers. They were going up against a very big heavy hitter, and that was Cisco. So how would they actually go about competing? Because from a product standpoint, they had a really good product, but really what they were trying to go for, especially early on in their career, was the highest performance, service provider grade carrier class routing capabilities. Not so much all that interested in the small office, home office, or anything like that. And that's how they were able to carve themselves a niche. So the idea of having a router wasn't necessarily all that unique. The idea of having a router that was geared toward that high-end service provider carrier class was actually what gave them that initial entree into the market. and that is going to end up defining a little bit of what features they put inside the product, etc. So sometimes the product influences the plan, and sometimes it's the plan that influences the product, but often it ends up being kind of a dance between those two things in that spectrum.
Very much like Juniper, we also saw Arista come onto the market as a competitor to Cisco. Again, not bringing necessarily a net new product, a completely unique new product, but rather trying to target that same market, but from a different angle. Looking at how to bring a switch to market that maybe did not include so many features and functions, but was meeting the most common needs of all the users, and trying to do so at a better price point, and actually to target a market with higher speed, higher performance, and maybe a smaller portfolio, which gave them a unique advantage. And today we see both Juniper and Arista with strength in the market, competing head to head with the gorilla there, Cisco, on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely, the nice thing about about this when it's executed well is if you're coming to market with a product that is there's already competitors that are already out there, they're already entrenched, they're years ahead of you in terms of development because they've been developing all these different features by maybe defining a different target market with a different target set of users. You can actually say, all this other stuff that this company that our competitors do are not really all that important to our core vision. So we don't have to worry about replicating those things. We can focus all of our attention on sometimes these other things that are more core toward the target market that we're going after. And the nice thing is your competition has to continue maintaining those things, whereas you never will end up having to do that. So you end up getting an opportunity. This having a well thought out strategy and plan on that line allows you to go through and streamline your entire process and make it so that you don't have to worry about all the things that your competition ends up having to worry about. You can just go straight to market with a cohesive plan.
Druce, there's so many unique ideas and concepts out there around ways to create a plan. I mean, I've heard interesting ones from companies that were created to target a big company because their operating model had reached a point where they couldn't necessarily compete. Just by starting a new company with a lower overhead gave them the ability to come in and take some of the market. We've seen companies come in looking at different consumption models as a way. I mean, cloud has really opened that up as ways to take traditional security products as a great example and convert those into consumable based models, convert those into cloud operating models, et cetera. We've also seen as software development continues to just thrive and grow, we've seen a whole lot of interest in companies starting up with a plan to target changing maybe a delivery mechanism from hardware or appliance based to something that's more code based and targeted at the developers. Same functions, same features, just a different consumption model. So the plan concept really flows across a lot of areas. And sometimes you may think you have a product when a plan might suit you better.
Absolutely. And I can't tell you, especially in the beginning era when things started moving into the cloud, how many opportunities that gave new scrappy startups when they knew that their competition was really had an entire business model based on selling expensive hardware. For them to come back and just be able to say, hey, we can run this as a virtual machine, we can run this in AWS. That means that number one, there's an entire layer of hardware that they don't have to come to market with. It ends up having great benefits in terms of COGS, and they don't have to worry about sort of maintaining inventory of hardware, etc. And then finally, it can potentially end up directly impacting your go-to-market. So if you're selling exclusively on the AWS marketplace, you don't have to maintain the same type or the same volume of a sales force as you would if you were out there, hawking expensive hardware. So it really gave people a really good opportunity. So targeting places that your competition typically can't follow you easily. If your competition has a vested interest in a particular market or anything like that, they've got a certain sales strategy that they can't easily maneuver off of. that's a really great way of being able to target them in a way that they can't really easily address.
When we started talking about this topic, one of the things that came to mind, and really even in our research, there's almost a fine line between having a product company and a plan company. Um, and as Drew said at the beginning, it's more of a spectrum than a division. One of the things we've seen, or one of the things we realize, is that even though you have a plan-based company, or maybe you're targeting a plan-based company, it doesn't mean that you have to completely ignore the intellectual property. You still need a product. It may just be that your product is not, as we've said earlier, completely unique to the industry. The goal is how you're using it, or how you're bringing it to market, or any number of different approaches that may give you a niche into that world. You also have to be careful to make sure and demonstrate that you aren't violating the patents of the big guys. So just like the or the product-based companies, you still have to go through all of the due diligence to make sure that you are unique in the industry. And you also have to make sure that you can demonstrate you have the rights over all the software that you're using in the code. Because in this day and age, most of our cybersecurity startups have significant investments in code. And it's really important to make sure that all of that is covered from a legal standpoint as well.
Having a very specific target, whether it's a target user or a target market or a target channel or whatever, all those things are going to help to crystallize exactly what you should be focusing on. So that's going to help you inform what intellectual property you actually need to develop. You don't have to worry about chasing after every little last feature that your competition has if those things are irrelevant to the people that you're trying to target or the plan that your company is actually going to be marching after. So it really helps to just kind of clarify your thinking in terms of what it is that you're going to be going after, what intellectual property you need to develop, what things you actually need to help nourish and maintain, and what things you can safely just kind of ignore because they aren't core to what you're trying to do. Sort of on that same line, like a strategy that I like to go after, we'll kind of pivot a little bit here, is to look at your competition, figure out what they're doing, and then do the exact opposite. So an example that I have here, and I've had some companies where we very much taken this advice. You look at a company like Splunk. Splunk, by every measure of success, has been a very successful company. The problem with Splunk is that they came up with a pricing model that was very much geared toward how to extract the most amount of money out of their clients as possible for what their original core business which was like trying to pull in alerts and things like that. And when that became wildly successful, people started like having the idea of, wouldn't it be nice to be able to have these same tools but to look at behavior data as opposed to just exceptions? Instead of just like, let me take a look at all of the alerts that everything is sending off, let me look at behavior. The problem is when you start looking at behavior data, you're looking at 10 times more data, and most people couldn't afford to do that. But unfortunately, by that point in time, Splunk had already kind of anchored themselves in the market with a certain price point that they were able to extract out of customers. They couldn't change their pricing model very easily without really upsetting Wall Street. And that has let a number of interesting companies out there to be able to attack them on that very front by changing not necessarily the product all that much, because their products can be sometimes very similar, but just changing the pricing model on how it's based so that the Splunk, their major competitor, really can't easily follow in behind there. So understand your competition, understand exactly what they're trying to do, and what are their dependencies? What can't they easily change? And maybe that is going to be the from a plan standpoint, the best place that you can strike them so that you can actually be a lot more effective.
But at the end of the day, Splunk still gives away some of the best T-shirts at the conferences.
Absolutely, you can't beat them on that.
Nobody panics when things go according to plan, even if the plan is horrifying.
So I hope that you've enjoyed this episode talking about different plan-based organizations. Again, we are trying to create a community of like-minded people out here. So we'd really like to encourage you guys to, if you found this useful, to like, subscribe, forward this on, repost, reblog, whatever, because we'd really like to hear from you. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to put them in the comments below. We'll try to get to those as quickly as we can. Hopefully, we can have some other like-minded people who might join in on the conversation as well. So until next time, my name is Druce McFarlane.
And I'm Jon Duran. Thanks for joining us for the Startup Planner. What am I missing here? I feel like we're not doing something right.